concept of too big to fail. I mean, let's say that GM was just, I mean, this close to bankruptcy. I mean, would you have let them fail if it came to that point?
Yeah, no, I do believe that there are certain core industries, and particularly in manufacturing, the gentleman talked before about, you know, our manufacturing base in this country, because we're a country that makes things. I mean, that's how we built ourselves. And I don't think you can turn a blind eye to a company like General Motors, particularly when the government was such a large contributor to their problems. You know, I think there are maybe some other industries and sectors of our economy where the government has less, if any, involvement, that I think the circumstances are a little different. But I don't think you can simply rescue a company that is just a victim of its own bad decisions. And I would not have supported the TARP, for example. I don't think that, you know, what happened last year with the vote that they took. And you know what always kind of got me? Because I saw Gary Peters, and he was just all upset that all these guys on Wall Street were going to get these bonuses. Well, the truth is, when he voted for the TARP bill, it contained the bonus right in the bill. So again, it proves that you haven't read the bill. So you need to know what you're voting on. I don't think that too big to fail is something that we should institutionalize in our government, but I don't think that anyone can stand before you and say, no, that they would never take a look at a situation like what occurred with General Motors and turn their back on them. If they did, I just don't think that they're going to last very long.
But on the other hand, Ford did not participate in any of these.
Right.
Why, in a sense, punish Ford for running their business better than GM?
Right. Well, and I think that's a very good question. And that's why I think the punishment has come to Ford. Not so much in the fact that General Motors is viable, but that Ford is now competing against the power of the federal government. That the federal government can make decisions through the regulatory process that will accrue to the benefit of their stock in General Motors or their relationship with the union and its ownership of Chrysler. I don't think that providing some loan guarantees to General Motors would have severely disadvantaged Ford Motor Company, but I do worry when they're playing against the house, so to speak, and trying to do business. And Ford ought to be commended and rewarded. And I think they were in the marketplace, as you saw that their sales of cars went up because people did value the approach that they took. Yes, sir.
Can I ask you to expand on something you mentioned before?
Sure.
And that was the idea of talking to and working with the other side. Because it seems to me, probably over the last couple of decades, there's an increasing trend, certainly in Washington as well as Lansing, where you look at a vote on a bill and everything is straight along party lines.
Right.
It's like nobody's thinking except the two heads of the party, and they tell everybody else in their party, this is how we're voting. What's your feelings on that, and how would you approach that in terms of even bucking the trend?
Yeah, I mean, our politics has become so polarized. When you take a look at the congressional districts around the country, there's only a handful of them that are competitive between the Republican and the Democrat. It's dominated in one party or the other during the primary process. And oftentimes, unfortunately, both from the left and the right, the louder you scream, the more attention you get and the more likely you are to get elected. And when you send people whose only criteria is that they, can scream louder than the next guy, there's no wonder there's a lot of distrust about government. I think it's essential that we provide the American people a government that is effective and efficient and that delivers on their tax dollars. That when we decide that we have a national priority and we construct a program, that we do it in the most effective way possible. I also think that much of what the federal government does, it shouldn't be in the business of. That state governments and local governments should assume as much responsibility as possible. But I know that you can disagree with also without being disagreeable. I mean, again, I do think there are times to fight, but there are also times to recognize that legislating is, it's like in business. I mean, if you walk into every business deal and expect to get everything you want every time, you're not going to get much done, because it's got to work to a situation where people can walk away and being able to feel as if something was accomplished. And that's what I want to do, is to get something accomplished, not to just scream and yell. I can do that when there may be times when that needs to be done. But by the same token, we also have to recognize that we need to come together and work effectively. And that's why I was so disappointed. One of the reasons I was so disappointed with health care, because it wasn't done that way. When you do it on one party, you don't have the buy-in of the American people. And generally, one party, in particular it's on the other side, doesn't get it right. And that's what we're looking at with this financial services reform bill. So I also know that the nature of this community also demands that you have some degree of independence. And again, I've seen it before. I know there are times when the party needs to coalesce, but I also know when you have to say, is it in the interests of Oakland County, is it in the interests of Michigan? If the answer is no, and even if my party leader's whispering in my ear, I'm going to stay with the people who sent me. I'm going to dance with the girl that I brought to the prom, if you know what I mean. So, yes, sir, we keep going back and forth. That's fine. That's good.
I'm just looking at, was glancing at your materials. Do you see an immigration problem in Michigan?
I do. I think there's an immigration problem throughout the country. Specifically with regard to Michigan, it certainly isn't as nearly as acute as it is in some other places, but I'm led to believe, and I don't want to be quoted necessarily on these figures, but there's, upwards of 100,000 illegal aliens in the state of Michigan. And again, I don't know that to be fact, but I do know from what I've read that you're looking at 400 to 500,000 in the state of Arizona. And it's a national problem. If it's a problem in Arizona, it's a problem in Michigan. It's one that we have to step up and take some responsibility for. And again, here, most of the action or inaction is driven by politics. Everybody wants to curry favor with the Hispanic community, so they don't want to do anything that would make these folks mad in the hopes that they will vote for us. And I'll tell you where it is a problem for Michigan. And Candace Miller, who's the former Secretary of State, now a member of Congress, introduced legislation to change this. We've all done the census here lately. The census goes out and they count every nose, regardless of your ethnic origin or even your citizenship. And when they're done with this count, they apportion 435 seats in the House of Representatives based entirely on population. So every one of those illegal aliens is being counted in the census. Michigan is losing a seat after this next election. That seat is going to Arizona or California or Utah or what have you, where we're seeing a large increase in illegal immigrants. So yes, it hurts us because we'll have one less Michigan voice beginning in January of 2013, and in large part because of illegal immigration. Now, what do we do about that? I don't believe that you can go out at night and start rounding people up and throw them in the back of a truck and drop them off on the other side of the border. I mean, that just would never work. But I do think you have to enforce the laws that we already have. Things like E-Verify, which insist, and I know it's a bit of a burden on employers, and I understand that, but by the same token, if we're ever going to deal with this problem, we've got to cut off the economic incentive for people to come to the United States. And people will self-deport if they can't find work. I mean, that's why people come here, it's, because they got a job. And so we've got to insist that we hire only those people who are here legally.
I'm just curious, why that it leads your materials in Oakland County?
Oh, it doesn't lead. I got a bunch of stuff. I don't know, whatever, that they've come out there.
The top sheet.
Well, a lot of people are very concerned about it. And I did want to make sure that people understood where I was coming from. Because, again, it's one of these things where there's a lot of yap, but nothing gets done. I think we have to, and I think we have the authority to end birthright citizenship, which is, a real problem. And I also think that making English the official language of the United States of America isn't asking too much either. People do want to know it, and it's a number of issues, but it's certainly near the top for sure. Did you have another?
That was my basic question when we started talking about immigration. Is the highest respect for our founding fathers, absolute. But now things are different, and I'm a little tired of hearing that in Arizona, where I do have family, they have so many infiltrated births here, paid for by our citizens. And then the immigration problem. Then what about the influx and